Hello everyone, my name is Claire Haillot and I'm here to talk to you about the floating stitches on the Designer Epic 3. So it's a stitch that is good for garment making as well as quilting and home deck. So there's two different ways of doing the floating stitch. Let me show you what I've done in the quilting. So here is a sample of a tablecloth that I have done, and you see those are the running stitch right here. So that's what allows us to create a special decorative stitch along as well as stitching the two pieces of fabric in place. There's also a way to do a floating stitch. So I could have actually done one of those floating stitches, and that's the reason they call floating, because they literally feel like they're just one stitch, and that it's as if you would have done one stitch, tied off, started a little bit further away. But however, it's not, and you'll see how easy it is to make that specific stitch. So let's go to the sewing machine so that we can now look on the screen where we can find that stitch in particular. So on the Designer Epic 3, I'm going to go into sewing mode. I love that the Joy OS asks me, what type of fabric. So of course I'm using regular quilting fabrics. And now I'm going to go into my stitches. So in order for me to get those stitches, I am going to go in the J menu, and here we go. Actually, let me just find them right now. And here they are in sub-menu 4. Those are all the floating stitches that are available on the Designer Epic 3. So I'm just going to choose the first one right here. I'm going to close the window so we can see it on the screen. And so I'm going to start by showing you a floating stitch so you can see exactly what it is. So in order to do the floating stitch, I am going to, because you always need stabilizer when you're doing that stitch, and I'm just using one piece of fabric that is folded in half. So right side up, so folded into the right side. All right, so let's now go to the sewing machine, and I am going to take just the regular applique foot, which is the B foot. So I'm just going to pop that in. You do need to have an applique foot, obviously, because that section, that area where you see the plus, that's like a satin stitch, if we can say. So you need to have room underneath the foot for the satin stitch. So let me just pull this back out. You see here, there's a nice, there's a tunnel, and so that's where the satin stitch will be able to go through. Okay, so I am putting actually no, and I'm glad, you see, that's what happens. So I am not sorry, when you're doing this particular floating stitch on one piece of paper, this is not actually the foot that you need. You're going to need to use, I have right now the clear B edge joining foot. I love that foot because it is clear. All right, so that's why I'm putting it onto the machine so that you can see what happens underneath. However, you could also use the edge joining foot for IDF system for the machine. And so in this particular case, this foot doesn't have the IDF, so you might want to actually, you want to use this one, because you see it has that little opening in the back for the IDF system. And so, okay, I wanted to use that one so you could see what's happening underneath, but because of the IDF, I'm going to put that one in, and we'll see how it goes. And so I've inserted the foot. I'm going to take my thread and put it to the back. And so you see the foot has a guide in the middle, which means that it's when the needle is in the middle, it's aligned with that guide. And I need that guide to be located on the right-hand side of the folded fabric. So I'm going to put my foot down, and I'm hoping that you guys can see. Let me just do a close-up right here. You see how the guide is right on the right-hand side of the fabric. It is not on the fabric. That is because when you look at this stitch, let me just grab my tweezers so I can show you right here. That line right here, that straight stitch, I want that straight stitch to happen only on the stabilizer. And then this satin stitch is going to be half on the stabilizer and half on the fabric. That's the whole idea behind that stitch. So let's just go back now to here, and I am going to use my foot pedal. I could also press start stop. I'm just going to reduce the speed so that you have time to see. Oops, sorry about that. I dropped my stiletto. I want to make sure that you have time to see what's happening. And of course, my dear friend Stiletto is always close by to make sure that everything is happening, everything is moving correctly underneath the foot. So here we are. Now you see that it is creating the plus sign with a satin stitch, and then it's going to do a straight stitch. And that straight stitch needs to happen only on the stabilizer, and that's why the guide is here to make sure that it is on the stabilizer, and that's what it did. So now that you've seen it, I'm just going to increase the speed so that we can go all the way down. And as we're doing that, I just want to say that for this particular satin stitch right now, floating stitch, sorry, I'm using a 50 weight thread. And so because it's a 50 weight thread, I can use an 80 size needle, which is a universal needle. And so, and in the bobbin, I have used, just like I would do for any other satin stitch design or applique. So I have like a bobbin thread underneath, which is a 60 weight in a neutral color. So that's how I am doing that floating stitch. All right, so we are now at the end. So I'm going to stop and cut the thread. And let's zoom out just a little bit. So you see, you have the beautiful design that is here. Let me switch cameras so that you guys can see a little bit better here. So now that the stitch is done, I need to open my fabric and just pull it. And so the fabric will be completely open, and you can iron the design, iron the fabric so that the crease really pops, disappears, and you can see the design. And you see here, that's what happens when you're doing a recording and you have all these cameras in front of you. That the guide on the foot was probably on the fabric, so it sewed on the fabric. So that's, you do not want to do that. So this is right here. See here, it's really not showing. That's what you want. And that's how you get that beautiful floating stitch on one piece of fabric. So imagine doing that on a garment. If you're making a skirt and you want to have these special intricate designs in specific areas of the skirt, this is how you would go about to make the design. Same thing if you're creating a bag or anything you want, you can create those floating stitches on any fabric. Now, I want to show you that you can also use that the floating stitch to stitch two pieces of fabric together. So this is the second way that you can actually use the project. So let's just go back here, and I have the stabilizer. I have my 2 layers of fabric, and this is where, guess what? I am changing the foot and going back to the original foot I had planned to use, which is the B foot, applique foot. So, and oh, you know what? This one, it doesn't have the IDF either. So I guess I can still use it because, well, you'll see if you feel that you need to have the IDF system or no IDF system. It depends really on one of the stitches that you're using, if there's a lot of satin stitch or not. So I will let you decide as you are playing with it. Now I am using this foot, and I'm putting the edge of my fabric to the edge of the foot. And I'm going to do the satin stitch. So if you are a quilter and you want to make sure that you are at 1/4 of an inch, then I suggest that you might just find, because the thing is that, you know, because you are going to be doing the satin stitch and you want it to appear everywhere, I guess the other thing you could do, which is something that I've done in the past, is I would put the open toe foot, I would move this around so that my design would be just aligning. Okay, I'm cutting, you know, making, probably overdoing it right now, but if you are a true quilter and you want to get that perfect 1/4 of an inch seam, then I would just mark it at first, just so I can know where is the center, where is the 1/4 of an inch when I am stitching in the center. So it would be here. Let me just double check. And so as I'm doing this, so then the needle is perfect. I'm going to put, so I know that my fabric needs to be on the inner edge of that foot. And so, and because it's an IDF foot, it's a clear open toe, not a clear, it's just an open toe foot with IDF system. I can bring that IDF back down and I can start doing my floating stitch. And so again, for this project, when you're looking at the screen, so I'm going to see if I can drive and show you this at the same time. It actually says that you do not need to have the IDF system. So I'm just going to bring the needle down and see if there's a difference. So let me just take that IDF off, because it's when you look at the instructions right here, there's no recommended IDF. So I'm going to take that out, but definitely you need to have stabilizer and an 80 size needle, which is good with what I have on my machine. So let's just continue on sewing. And we're going to go all the way to the end. So it's the same stitch. It's just that because I have two different fabric, I'm not using the same foot. So the foot that that can go with the design with the stitch will depend on what type, if you're using two fabrics together or just one. And so this is what you have to look into before starting. So if it's two fabric, you ing a regular foot, and if it's one piece of fabric, then you need to be using that joining, the edge joining foot, because you have the guide in the middle and you're sure that you're going to be on the stabilizer. All right, so I am actually opening it up right now. Let's bring it to the camera so we can see what it looks like right now. So I am tugging it, pulling, and of course an iron will definitely be helpful here. And you can see the beautiful stitch out happening here. So this is really a fun stitch to learn to learn to use. So do find it on your machine. So I've shown you this one. This is another quilt that I did. There's a lot of fabric. I know it's a scrap quilt. And so when you look at it, I actually, I'm going to do a close-up here, because I used that stitch when I joined the two blocks together. So you see here, this is where I've actually used the floating stitch. So there are multiple ways that you can use the floating stitch. You can also use it when you're doing a crazy quilt. So here's a crazy quilt right here. And so, oops, sorry. So here's the crazy quilt. So you can do your stitch your fabrics together at the same time as you're doing your decorative stitch. And then also another fun thing to know is that if you want to imagine this, so for all the samples that I've showed you, the back was just a regular bobbin thread, but you could actually use, okay, I'm trying to go too fast here, so let me slow down here. This is a placemat that I did, which is a reversible placemat. And you see how the floating stitch is visible on both sides. And so this time I've used one color in the spool for the top and another color of thread on the bottom to match the fabric in the back. So basically what I did here is I had my two pieces of fabric on the top. Instead of the stabilizer, consider having your big piece of batting to do the placemat, and underneath another 2 layers of fabric. All right, so you have 5 layers together. You go and do the floating stitch. You open the top, you open the bottom, and then you continue with all the rest, one strip at a time on both sides as you go along to have this beautiful design. Okay, so that's how I do my reversible quilts using the floating stitch. So I hope that this quick review of the floating stitch has helped you understand all the different ways that you can use a floating stitch, whether it's in garment making or in quilting or even home dec. I mean, pillowcases, they can look really nice with a nice floating stitch. And consider also the threads that you could use, because you could use decorative threads. I'm thinking for a pillow, even metallic threads, why not? So go and have fun, discover all the many possibilities using the floating stitch. So happy stitching, everyone.